Hello everyone, I'm Literary Freak 11, and this is my pet snake, Salazar Slytherin, and he's going to be hanging out with me in this video, but I'm not going to have him on camera the whole time because holding up my arm would be exhausting. Series I won't finish, so these are series that I started, I read most or all of the first book, maybe even beyond that, and I just don't think I'm going to continue with them. I think they kind of fall into two categories. Either I read the first one and I wasn't a fan, or I just kind of liked the way the book ended too well. And most of them kind of fall into this category, except for two. So the first book I'm going to be talking about is Throne of Glass. This book, it just didn't do it for me. Like, it was just super average. There was nothing special. I actually came off this book after reading Monster Calls. And if you don't know, that book is about a 13-year-old boy whose mom is dying of cancer. And then in Throne of Glass, she just marches in there. She's like, I killed 23 people. Who cares? And I'm like, I can't go from one mentality to the other. So I had to put it down for a while. And I think that kind of just killed it for me. It was very unfortunate because Throne of Glass is a series that's much beloved. It's about this girl who is been in prison because she's an assassin, Selena, and she gets pulled out by the king to be his champion for this thing, and the deal is that she serves him, does whatever he says for a couple of years, and then she's free. So she does it, and there's some magical stuff happening that's very poorly explained, and I can't explain it to you because I didn't get it. Next book I have is Walk on Earth, a Stranger. I love this book. So, this book is about a girl who can sense gold, and she lives in the gold rush, basically, and she goes out west with her friend after her parents are brutally murdered and her uncle, comes into town, and it's just like, I own you now. And she's like, how about no? And it's about the struggles that she survived. She ends up hitching on with a caravan of people going out west, and it's about their struggles, but then it also has this very interesting fantasy element. The world is really well built. The historical accuracy is super good. I just love this book. And then the ending wrapped up so well, and I just saw other things about how there's supposed to be a series, and I was just like, why? And it's funny because I listened to it as an audiobook, maybe about half an hour before the end. I was just like, oh god, I want more of this. And then it ended, and I was like, no, not really. Next one is Eragon, and this falls into its own category of, no, I just don't want to give the author more money. And the reason is because I thought it was supposed to be a trilogy. I had a long gap between the second and the third. I finally listened to the third as an audiobook, and I didn't remember a lot of it. I was like, hey, fine. And then, I'm maybe 2 hours before the end. I'm like, they can't wrap all of this up in an hour. And then I realized it's supposed to be a series, and I was pissed, and I was like, you should have just wrapped it up. And I don't want to deal with this anymore. And the same thing happened to Miss Peregrine's. I read all three of the books. I was like, oh, it's supposed to be a trilogy. And then I heard there was a fourth book coming out. And people asked me if I was going to read it. And I said no. Because I was happy with the way it ended. I don't need more from that universe. It's funny because I was very unhappy with the couple in Miss Peregrine. If you don't know what this is about, it's a home for children who have powers. They live in this time loop, so it's the same day over and over again. And that's the only place that they can exist, essentially. Like, if they leave, they'll age rapidly in, a day or two and just die. The book expands that universe a lot more. It teaches you a lot about it, and it's super interesting the way it functions. There's a fourth book, and I'm not interested. Okay, the next book on my list is Children of Blood and Bone. This book will also be on my hype books that I wasn't a fan of. And I gave it 3 stars. It's not like I hated it. But it didn't wow me either. It was just, average, and I just felt like it was overhyped. It was like, oh, it's the next Harry Potter. I saw things that said that. And I was just like, I like the magic system. I didn't really like any of the characters. I didn't like the relationships, and the conflict, is just standard. I'm glad I read it. I enjoyed it. I read it in a week, and it's a big book, but I just don't think I'm gonna want to continue. For me, I'm a slow reader, so I would like to explore as many universes as possible versus exploring one universe very in depth, and that's just a personal preference. Next series that I will not be finishing is Goose Girl, and this is also another one that I read and I loved, and the problem is you need a hook to bring me to book 2, and this didn't have it. That hook just didn't exist. And it was very interesting. Goose Girl is about a girl who is a princess. She goes off to be married in this land. Her maidservant gets together a coup of the soldiers, and it's like, you don't deserve to marry the prince, I do. And so she ends up traveling the rest of the way to the kingdom anyway for the guy that she's supposed to marry. And she ends up working as a palace servant. And so it's kind of this experience of her being like, what is work? And the characters are so good and so rich, and honestly, it was a pleasure to read, and I just can't tell you why I'm not going on to the second. It didn't have that, series feel to me. It didn't have that hook from, one book to the next, so that's my personal take on it. The next book I have is The Doldrums, and this is a middle grade fiction about a boy who's 11, I think. His grandparents get lost on an iceberg, and he visits, and he lives with his parents, but he loves them, and they're kind of like the fun people in the family, and so he misses them a lot, and he decides that with his 2 friends, they're going to go on an adventure on their own. They're going to find his grandparents. And the funny thing was that they spent all that book planning, and then the plan messes up and they don't actually get to go on the adventure. So that was a very interesting aspect of it. The problem is his grandparents show up at the end, and we're like, yeah, we couldn't tell you we existed. And they don't show up. They send him a letter in a package. And I was like, this isn't enough. And there's some secret society. I'm like, yeah, but you just spent this whole book telling me about this journey they're not going on. I can't really think about this plot that was secondary for the whole book and now is suddenly going to be the focus. Next book is the Iron King series. Now, I have never been a fan of Fae, personally, but I thought this was kind of an interesting series. I actually read the second book, The Iron Daughter, because clearly there was enough of a hook to get me from one book to the next. But the love is so trashy, the girl is so needy, and look, there are real girls who are needy. You kind of just have to represent them badly when you do it. You know what I mean? You don't want them to be like your main character that you're supposed to like and support, and then there's, of course, a cringy romance between 2 magical creatures for her, Twilight-esque, and that really, I actually started the second book and DNF'd it, and it was one of probably 3 books that I've DNF'd in the last year. The next series is The Diabolic, and that book also was amazing, but I felt, it's about this girl who's been genetically engineered. And then her brain, they bond her with someone, and she is going to protect that person with her life. And so she's bonded to this girl, Seadona, and she protects her. And that's it. She makes sure that she's okay. But they also, because they're bonded, they're also friends. They also like each other, And Seadona is sent to the Emperor's court because her dad's a heretic, doesn't believe in the religion, which is very important to them. And they believe in science, which, firstly, I don't think that's an either-or thing, but apparently in this society it is. But a lot of their technology is breaking. They basically only have whatever technology existed before. So basically a futuristic version of the Amish. So they have the technology, like the spaceships and beauty bots and things like that. And then the technology to repair the technology. And that's about it. Things are breaking down, spaceships are just exploding, or, you know, people are dying left and right, and they, you know, they're becoming more common. This book was so good, and I highly recommend it. And I might have, but it wrapped up so well, and then I might have even read the second one if it had been a duology. Then I saw there was a third coming out, and I went, how about no? Like, it just didn't seem worth it to me to read all those books, especially because I was so happy with the way it ended. Like, everyone's so backstabbing, and the final person, like, finally got the, like, last backstab, the last say. Everyone else all the bad guys got screwed. Beautiful. The next book I picked up at the library in the YA section. It's called Rootless. It's basically about a society where trees don't exist, and there's basically just dust everywhere, and it's horrible, and people die early of God knows what medical things. And then they essentially have to travel across country for something. They're trying to find the trees, like the real trees, because there's rumors that they're out there somewhere. He grew up with his dad. His dad disappeared more recently. His mom, I think, disappeared like right after he was born. So he goes out to find his dad, and his mom's a freak. Yeah, that's it. And then that one kind of wrapped up, and there was kind of only one hook into the next book, and it wasn't a good enough hook. And I was like, hey, this is one and done. The last book I have is an independent read that I picked up at Comic-Con called Flesh of the Blood, and I actually read it 2 out of 3 in the trilogy. This is a high fantasy about a society where, you know, the princess has an attempted murderer, and basically there are orcs coming, and the society's like on the verge of crumbling because of it, and they have no idea where all these orcs are coming from. So this team sets out, the king sends a bunch of champions to try and figure out what's happening. It's literally just all battles, all them fighting orcs. I was exhausted for them. I'm like, can you just die already? This would be so much easier. What is the point? Like, these orcs, like, there just seem to be no end, and I would have just liked to know, like, they're killing all these orcs. I'm like, are they even making a dent? First book was really interesting. There was a lot of good world building. I liked a lot of, there were a lot of characters because there are a lot of people sent on this, like, expedition. So that was kind of, like, hard to process, but, like, other than that, I really liked the first one. And then the second one, I just slogged through it. It was super hard. They ended up getting rescued by, like, a secret tribe of elves that lives in the clouds. Sorry I spoiled it. I could even be wrong about this because I was just so spaced out when I was reading it. Anyway, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. I'm trying to grow my channel. And share this video if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.